In the dead of night, on August 8, 1995, a convoy of 3 black presidential vehicles quietly slipped across the Iraqi border into Jordan. The passengers inside were no ordinary diplomats or standard government officials. They were the absolute closest figures to the epicenter of power in Baghdad. In the first car sat a man who, until a few hours ago, was considered the most feared military figure in Iraq next to Saddam Hussein himself. Hussein Kamel al-Majid, the Minister of Military Industries, the mastermind behind Iraq's secret nuclear programs, and the commander of the Republican Guard. Beside him sat his wife, Ragad, the eldest daughter of Saddam Hussein, her eyes staring anxiously into an unknown future. The second car carried Saddam Kamel, Hussein's brother, alongside his wife, Rana, Saddam's second daughter. 3 days later, the world stared at their television screens in sheer disbelief. Standing before reporters at the royal palace in Amman, Hussein Kamel uttered words that shook the walls of the presidential palace in Baghdad to their core. He publicly announced his defection from Saddam Hussein's regime, declaring that his ultimate goal was to overthrow the ruling government of Iraq. In Baghdad, a furious Saddam Hussein appeared before the cameras, his face flushed with rage. The man who had ruled with absolute, iron-fisted power for 20 years was now facing an unthinkable betrayal. A betrayal by a man he had not only placed on the throne of power, but had welcomed into his own family, his own son-in-law. With a voice struggling to hide its tremor, Saddam delivered a chilling verdict. He betrayed me, just as Judas betrayed Jesus. History is in the headlines, but the truth, that's hidden in the profiles. Welcome to Profile. Subscribe to join our community of curious minds. Who exactly was Hussein Kamel, the man who had once been Saddam's closest confidant, enjoying privileges denied even to Saddam's own sons? A man who rose from a simple soldier in a remote village to become the second most powerful man in Iraq, only to hurl himself into a terrifying freefall? This is the story of one of the bloodiest family purges in the political history of the Middle East. A tale of power, conspiracy, love, and immense hatred, ending in a horrific massacre. But why did these two brothers risk everything? What dark secrets did they carry that made their escape and subsequent murder so absolutely vital to Saddam's regime? And how did Saddam's promise of amnesty turn into a lethal, inescapable trap? To understand the bizarre and tragic story of Saddam's sons-in-law, we must go back in time. Back to a small village near Tikrit, where an impoverished and illiterate Hussein Kamel first dreamed of power. Born on June 18, 1954, in the village of Tal al-Dahab, Hussein Kamel came from a humble family belonging to the very same clan as Saddam Hussein. His birthplace was only a few kilometers away from Saddam's own native village of Al-Auja. In 1966, before even finishing elementary school, Hussein Kamel's education came to a halt. He was forced to work to support his family. But 8 years later, in 1974, his destiny radically shifted. When Saddam Hussein rose to the position of vice president of Iraq, Hussein Kamel was hired as one of his personal bodyguards. 5 years later, after Saddam ruthlessly sidelined President Hassan al-Bakr and seized the presidency, Hussein Kamel completed a reserve officer training course and entered the Iraqi army as a first lieutenant. Obsessed with his own security, Saddam chose to surround himself with relatives and tribesmen. Thanks to his unwavering loyalty, Hussein Kamel quickly earned the dictator's supreme trust. But the move that permanently cemented his place at the center of power was his marriage to Ragad, Saddam's eldest daughter, in 1983. This union sparked massive tensions within the ruling family. Saddam's powerful half-brothers, Barzan, Sabawi, and Watban, had desperately wanted Ragad to marry one of their own sons. Saddam later recalled in his memoirs, "My brother objected to this marriage, and my other brothers protested as well. This issue caused a great deal of complication in my relationship with them." Through this marriage, Hussein Kamel transformed from an obscure officer into a core member of the ruling dynasty. Saddam, who believed in cementing his regime through bloodlines and personal loyalty, saw the young man as his ultimate enforcer. And Hussein Kamel quickly proved his worth. He was appointed head of presidential security, and soon after took command of the elite Republican Guard. His success was staggering. He expanded the Guard's divisions and modernized their weaponry, transforming them into the deadliest military force in Iraq. Following the end of the Iran-Iraq War in 1988, he was appointed Minister of Industries, and by the early 1990s, he took on the role of Minister of Defense. He eventually merged the Ministry of Industries with the Military Industries Organization, seizing absolute control over both. Hussein Kamel had become a machine of pure power. He controlled the vital arteries of Iraq's economy and security, building a massive network of loyalists. He was rapidly promoted to Lieutenant General, the highest military rank in the Iraqi army. He was even handed control of Iraq's top-secret nuclear project. The trust Saddam placed in him was boundless. Hussein Kamel and his brother were among the very few individuals on Earth allowed to carry loaded weapons in Saddam's presence, a terrifying privilege denied even to Saddam's own sons and brothers. His brother, Saddam Kamel, also reaped the rewards of this proximity. He married Saddam's second daughter, Rana, joining the exclusive ranks of presidential sons-in-law. While he never reached his brother's dizzying heights of political power, Saddam Kamel enjoyed immense wealth, living a king's life in the shadow of the dictator. These two brothers, born in an obscure, dusty village, now resided in Baghdad's most opulent palaces, holding the fate of millions of Iraqis in their hands. It seemed their golden era would last forever. But destiny was quietly preparing a nightmare. The invasion of Kuwait in 1990 marked another massive turning point in Hussein Kamel's life. As one of Saddam's chief advisors in orchestrating the invasion, he faced the disastrous aftermath head-on. Following Iraq's crushing defeat and the liberation of Kuwait, a massive uprising erupted across 14 of Iraq's 18 provinces. Saddam's order to Hussein Kamel was absolute: crush the rebellion with extreme prejudice. Commanding the Republican Guard, Kamel unleashed heavy weaponry, tanks, artillery, and missiles, slaughtering over 150,000 Iraqis in a horrifying bloodbath. While this ruthless crackdown cemented his untouchable status with Saddam, it forever branded him as a monster in the eyes of the Iraqi opposition. In the wake of the Gulf War, brutal economic sanctions crippled Iraq. Inflation and unemployment skyrocketed, paralyzing the nation. But in the shadows, a highly lucrative black market thrived, and it was controlled by none other than Uday Hussein, Saddam's violent and wildly unpredictable eldest son. To avoid a fatal clash over these illicit profits, Kamel invited Uday into a partnership. Together they founded the Al-Amir Company, smuggling sanctioned goods into Iraq through Iran. The enterprise generated unimaginable wealth for both men, but the underlying venomous tension never evaporated. Uday was Saddam's blind spot, infamous for his explosive, homicidal rage. High-ranking officials, including Hussein Kamel himself, lived in constant terror of becoming Uday's next victim. In one chilling incident, Uday executed his own bodyguard at a party, simply because the man had fired his weapon in the air before Uday had the chance. This paralyzing fear of Uday's madness, combined with Kamel's own towering ambition, planted the seeds of a coup. But Kamel knew the dark reality of Iraq. Launching a coup from the inside was practically impossible. Even his closest military officers would suspect it was a deadly loyalty test orchestrated by Saddam himself. To overthrow the regime, Kamel had to orchestrate it from the outside. He could feel his absolute power slipping. Uday and others were actively encircling him, slowly cutting away his influence over Iraq's military and oil wealth. Furthermore, Kamel knew the crippling international sanctions would never end as long as Saddam remained in power. He calculated that by defecting and leading a regime change, the Western powers would surely back him. The final, explosive trigger came in 1995, during a tense family gathering at one of Saddam's palaces. In a fit of rage, Uday verbally abused and threatened to kill Hussein Kamel's son, Saddam's own grandson. For Ragad, Kamel's wife and Saddam's daughter, this was the breaking point. She later recounted the horror. "I felt that if we stayed, a bloodbath would unfold, not between strangers, but within my own family. My father, my husband, and my sister's husband would all be dragged into it." Terrified for her children, she fully supported the desperate plan to flee. On August 9, 1995, the plan was set into motion. Hussein Kamel, his brother Saddam Kamel, their wives, and their children loaded into 3 bulletproof presidential Mercedes-Benzes and sped toward the Jordanian border. The escape was masterfully orchestrated using Kamel's immense authority. At the border, he personally deceived the customs director, claiming the convoy was on a highly classified top-secret government mission. The gates opened. When they crossed the border, King Hussein of Jordan was caught completely off guard. But he welcomed the high-profile defectors warmly, granting them political asylum. It was a staggering geopolitical gamble. Jordan's economy was heavily dependent on Iraqi oil, and Saddam could cut the supply in an instant. Yet, weighing the immense international pressure and the golden political opportunity this defection presented, the king opened his doors to Saddam's exiled inner circle. During his very first meeting with King Hussein, Kamel unleashed a bombshell. He revealed highly classified intelligence that Saddam was secretly plotting a second, devastating invasion of Kuwait and a new strike against eastern Saudi Arabia. Shocked by the revelation, the Jordanian king immediately picked up the phone to U.S. President Bill Clinton. Clinton firmly assured him that if Iraq retaliated by cutting off Jordan's economic lifeline, the United States would step in to help. King Hussein then contacted King Fahd of Saudi Arabia, sharing the explosive intelligence. In response, the Saudi king swiftly dispatched his chief of intelligence, Turki al-Faisal, to meet the defector. 3 days after crossing the border, Kamel stood before the world's press at the Ragadan Palace, officially announcing his defection and his intention to overthrow the Iraqi regime. The political earthquake had begun. In Baghdad, the shockwave hit hard. A stunned Saddam Hussein took to the airwaves, delivering a furious speech. He accused his son-in-law of embezzling millions of dollars from the Ministry of Industries. He famously compared him to Judas, declaring, "Just as Judas betrayed Jesus, Hussein Kamel has betrayed me." Saddam's vengeance was immediate. He ordered the arrest of every single member of Kamel's extended family and inner circle back in Iraq. Even worse, Kamel's own tribe, the powerful Al-Majid clan, issued a formal public decree. They officially disowned him, declaring that the blood of Hussein Kamel and his brother was now mubah, legally and morally permitted to be spilled by anyone. Desperate to drag the defectors back to the slaughterhouse, Saddam's psychotic son, Uday, and his ruthless cousin, Ali Hassan al-Majid, infamously known as Chemical Ali, rushed to Amman. They demanded that King Hussein hand the brothers over. The king flatly refused, stating he would never forcefully repatriate anyone against their will. To the West, and especially to the United States, Hussein Kamel was the ultimate intelligence goldmine. As the mastermind behind Iraq's military industries and clandestine nuclear projects, he knew exactly where the bodies were buried. The U.S. dispatched a massive, high-level delegation of intelligence operatives, CIA experts, and government officials to Jordan. Their mission was twofold: extract every piece of data regarding weapons of mass destruction and evaluate Kamel's plan for regime change. Simultaneously, Rolf Ekéus, the head of the UN weapons inspectors, rushed to Amman. It was during these interrogations that Kamel dropped his ultimate payload. He revealed the existence of a massive, hidden archive. Over 5 million documents detailing Iraq's top-secret nuclear and biological weapons programs that had been deliberately concealed from the UN. And the hiding place? A simple, unassuming chicken farm owned by Kamel himself, located just south of Baghdad. UN inspectors immediately raided the farm and unearthed the devastating evidence. This staggering discovery completely obliterated whatever fragments of trust the UN still had in Iraq, allowing the US to drastically prolong the crippling international sanctions. Kamel also handed over a hit list of foreign companies and experts secretly collaborating with Iraq's weapons programs, many of whom would be hunted down, arrested, or killed following the US invasion in 2003. Cornered, the Iraqi government attempted a ridiculously desperate countermove. Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz met with Ekéus, handing over heavily classified documents and blatantly lying that the regime had just discovered them after Kamel's defection. Aziz claimed it was Kamel alone who had hidden the weapons data from the government. Ekéus, entirely unconvinced by this absurd theater, told the press he didn't buy a single word of it. But while Kamel triumphed as a military whistleblower, his political ambitions were violently crumbling. He fully expected to be hailed by the West as the future leader of a liberated Iraq. Instead, the Iraqi opposition groups flatly refused to sit in the same room with him. To them, he was not a savior. He was the very face of Saddam's slaughter. He was the butcher of the 1991 uprisings. Mohammed Bakir al-Hakim, a supreme leader of the Iraqi Islamic opposition, publicly rejected him. "Our stance is clear. He is part of a criminal regime. He has committed horrific crimes against humanity. It is impossible for us to shake a hand deeply stained with the blood of our nation's children." When Kamel's representative reached out to facilitate a secret meeting in Tehran or Syria, al-Hakim's associate simply hung up the phone. Over 70 different Iraqi opposition newspapers universally condemned him. He thought he was walking into a coronation, but Hussein Kamel was rapidly discovering that he had become a total, isolated pariah. During a tense meeting in Amman, Hussein Kamel presented his grand 3-point master plan for regime change to the American delegation. He demanded U.S. political backing, guarantees against foreign interference, and the immediate lifting of international sanctions once Saddam was gone. But his military strategy to overthrow the dictator? It was borderline delusional. Kamel proposed capturing a military airbase near the Jordanian border and declaring a rival government. He believed that when Saddam inevitably sent the Republican Guard to crush him, he would simply use his special relationship with the commanders to convince them to join his rebellion and march on Baghdad. The Americans listened in silence, but behind closed doors they completely dismissed him. They assessed Kamel as a man entirely lacking the political leadership required to lead a new Iraq. They had gotten their intelligence. Now, they were done with him. Gradually, Kamel realized the terrifying truth. His circle of allies was rapidly shrinking. Those who had scrambled to take a photo with him on day one now refused to even be seen in the same room. No Western nation was willing to host him. The Iraqi opposition violently rejected him, and the U.S. government ignored him. Even King Hussein of Jordan felt he had bet on a losing horse. Kamel's security detail was deliberately downsized, and subtle, chilling messages were delivered. His presence in Jordan was no longer welcome. Meanwhile, the head of Jordanian intelligence and the chief of the royal court paid him a terrifying visit. They informed Kamel that he had to face a prosecutor regarding formal charges leveled against him. Their message was clear: no one is above the law. Kamel realized that staying in Jordan could mean imprisonment, and right on cue, Saddam Hussein cast his deadly bait. Through public television broadcasts, Saddam repeatedly sent messages assuring Kamel that if he returned, all would be forgiven. Desperate, isolated, and facing legal ruin, Kamel summoned an Iraqi astrologer named Hamid al-Azhari from Paris to read his future. After their meeting, the astrologer told Kamel exactly what he wanted to hear. "I see your star high over Baghdad. You will be the next president of Iraq, but only if you return immediately. Outside of Iraq, you have no future." Many intelligence analysts heavily suspect the astrologer was a planted operative working directly for Iraqi intelligence. Then came the final, fatal stroke of deception. The Iraqi ambassador to Jordan presented Kamel with an official, signed document from Saddam Hussein himself. It was a blanket pardon, absolving him of all crimes and guaranteeing his absolute safety upon returning. The document was even proudly published in Iraqi state newspapers. After 6 agonizing months in exile, with all his grand illusions shattered, Kamel made a fatal miscalculation. Clinging to the signed pardon and the astrologer's prophecy, he convinced himself that the family rift could be healed. On February 20th, 1996, Hussein Kamel prepared to leave Jordan in the exact same presidential vehicles he had used to escape. But just before the convoy departed, King Hussein intervened. Acting reportedly on a frantic plea from the Queen, the king strictly forbade Kamel's sister Ilham, her husband, and their young children from joining the convoy. Jordanian royal security correctly feared an impending, horrific massacre, and they refused to let the children ride into a slaughterhouse. At the Iraqi border, a special welcoming committee was waiting. But it wasn't a reception of honor. It was Saddam's wife, Sajida, and the violently furious Uday. It was a dark, chilling omen of the absolute doom that awaited the defecting sons-in-law. The moment they reached Baghdad, Hussein and Saddam Kamel were violently separated from their wives and children. They were dragged to their sister's house in the Al-Jadriya district, a location that was nothing more than a temporary death row. The very next day, Saddam Hussein dispatched a judge to the house. The brothers were forced at gunpoint to officially divorce Ragad and Rana. The daughters were immediately taken back to their father's palace. Now, the brothers were entirely stripped of their royal protection. With the divorce finalized, Saddam executed the ultimate act of vengeance. He gathered the elders of the Al-Majid tribe, his and Kamel's own bloodline. Looking them in the eye, Saddam declared, "I have waived my personal right to vengeance, but it is up to the tribe to decide their fate." It was the ultimate mafia green light. Saddam had officially ordered his own family to execute the defectors. On the evening of February 23, 1996, the horror began. Tribal militias, heavily backed by Saddam's elite Fedayeen death squads, surrounded the sisters' house where the brothers were trapped. The assault was sudden, overwhelming, and utterly merciless. For 12 agonizing hours, the neighborhood shook as the house was relentlessly pounded by heavy machine gun fire and RPG rockets. Hussein Kamel, his brother Saddam Kamel, their father, and their sister fought back desperately. But they were drowning in a sea of fire and bullets. By dawn, the house was reduced to a smoldering pile of ash. The brothers, their father, their sister, and her children were all slaughtered in the bloodbath. According to eyewitnesses, in his final, desperate moments, Hussein Kamel managed to crawl out of the burning wreckage. But waiting for him right at the doorway was his own uncle. Without uttering a single word, the uncle raised his assault rifle and emptied the entire magazine directly into Hussein Kamel's head. When the smoke cleared, the mutilated bodies were dragged from the rubble. By the direct order of Ali Hassan al-Majid, Chemical Ali, Hussein Kamel's bullet-riddled corpse was left rotting in the street for all to see. A terrifying warning to anyone who dared to cross Saddam Hussein. Ultimately, the brothers were dumped into unmarked graves in the abandoned Al-Gharaba cemetery, as if they had never existed. Years later, Kamel's surviving sister, Manahal, revealed the staggering toll of the massacre. My father, 3 of my brothers, 2 of my sisters, and 5 of my nieces and nephews were killed. 4 years later, my mother was stabbed to death, and we never found the killer. She cursed Saddam Hussein's name every single day until his regime finally collapsed. Following the massacre, a sham Iraqi court officially closed the case. They ruled that because the family had formally declared the brothers' blood mubah, permissible to shed, no legal action would be taken against the killers. And just like that, the file on the bloodiest family purge in the Middle East was permanently sealed, but Hussein Kamel's ghost would go on to haunt Iraq. The staggering intelligence he handed over to the UN inspectors guaranteed that the crippling international sanctions would torture the Iraqi people for years to come. And those very same revelations about weapons of mass destruction paved the direct road for the 2003 US invasion that finally toppled Saddam Hussein, even though those weapons were long gone by the time the bombs fell. Following the regime's collapse, Ragad and Rana fled back to Jordan, where they live in exile today. The story of Hussein Kamel is the story of a man blinded by the intoxicating illusion of absolute power. He dared to stand against one of history's most terrifying dictators, only to become a disposable pawn for global superpowers before being butchered by his own blood. Every story has 2 sides, and the truth usually lies somewhere in the shadows. We want to hear your perspective. Join the discussion in the comments below. If this profile gave you a new perspective, support our mission with a like and share. Thank you for being part of the Profile community. Until next time, stay curious.